Well, if you can believe it, the NFL season is already through week 9. The Jets are at 3-6 and the Giants are at 2-7. Not exactly what many fans in New Jersey had hoped for, but there's still a lot of season left, and as cliche as it may sound, anything can happen. Here to talk about both teams is our good friend John Schmeelk. John, I was in the car yesterday and I happened to catch your pregame show. Good stuff, man, and thanks for coming on my show this morning.
I appreciate it, Mike. Always happy to do it. And now that the baseball seasons are over, all the focus goes on football. And the Jets held up their end of the bargain this week, but the Giants came up a little bit short on Sunday against the Commanders.
You are correct. So let's talk about the Giants. The biggest positive for Giants fans yesterday was probably the throwback uniforms from when we were kids. They lost 27-22. The game itself, it wasn't a blowout, but it is their fourth straight loss. What was their biggest weakness in this game?
Yeah, look, they cut it to a one-score game in the fourth quarter. The Giants scored on every single one of their second-half drives. They had 3 drives, scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Should have had 3 touchdowns, if not for in my opinion, a very weak offensive pass interference call in the end zone that took a touchdown off the board for the Giants. So they moved the ball well. They scored touchdowns. Their defense, though, could not stop the Washington Commanders. The Commanders had 8 possessions, and they scored on 6 of them. They only had to punt twice in this game. The Giants could not stop the run. Whenever Jaden Daniels needed a big third down conversion, they were able to get it. Giants allowed a couple really big plays at the end of the first half to allow the Commanders to get a touchdown on the board instead of holding them to a field goal. So as opposed to some of the more recent games, this to me was a big issue on the defensive side of the ball. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't really pressure Jaden Daniels much. And again, they allowed some critical plays to go against them and explosive ones in big situations. So if the Giants would have gotten one more stop at the end of the game, given the offense the ball back, they would have had a chance to tie or win the game. But the defense simply could not get that stop and get off the field.
Well, the defense may not have been up to par, but let's talk about the offense, and let's specifically talk about Daniel Jones's performance. Really not a bad game. 20 for 26, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Certainly performed better than the last 3 losses. And actually, I thought this was interesting. He threw his first touchdown at home since the end of the 2022 season. Could this game be some kind of turning point for Daniel Jones?
Yeah, Jones had played well on the road this year. He's played well away from MetLife Stadium, but he had been brutal. I mean, just terrible. The whole offense has been at MetLife Stadium this year. The Giants, heading into this game in 16 quarters at home, 4 full games, had scored 1 offensive touchdown. I mean, you can't win games that way. So they come out in this game, they score 3 touchdowns. They actually do a pretty nice job, scoring the football here, but they could not sustain enough drives and make enough explosive plays to get where they needed to go. But Daniel Jones played well. He didn't turn the ball over. He had 2 touchdowns, no picks. He only had to throw the ball 6 times in the first half, believe it or not, because the Giants ran for 140 yards. They were able to run the ball really well against the Commanders. Tyrone Tracy had another good game. But when they needed Daniel Jones to step up in the second half and throw the football, he did so confidently and accurately. They did a pretty good job protecting him against this Commanders pass rush. And it was by far Daniel Jones' best home performance since 2022, to be totally honest with you. So a nice job, and you hope he can build on that as the Giants head to Germany. And I'll be heading to Germany with the team on Thursday night for Friday morning when they play the Panthers on Sunday.
Can't wait for that. So let's switch to the Jets. In their latest game against the Texans, they snapped a 5-game losing streak. Aaron Rodgers looked good. A great game for Garrett Wilson. What was the difference for the Jets between that game and the previous 5?
They made some really big plays on offense in the second half of the game. And I think Hassan Reddick being back, you saw the pass rush. It really activated well in that game. And they were harassing the opposing quarterback the entire game. C.J. Stroud could not get comfortable. They forced him into some bad throws because of that pressure. So I think defensively that was the key. And then look, the way Aaron Rodgers runs his offense, he wants to attack matchups, and he throws a lot of go balls, back shoulders, and those are high volatility plays. Some weeks they're not going to connect, and the offense is going to look bad. Other weeks it's going to connect, and the offense will look a lot better. And this was one of the weeks where he connected with Garrett Wilson, who made a couple of unbelievable catches in the game. The kind of Air Jordan logo catch with the one hand in the end zone we've all seen this week. That was a great catch. Devontae Adams had a great double move down the sideline for a touchdown. That was another great play in this game. So they were able to connect on some of those big plays in the second half offensively, and then I think their pass rush really carried the day for their defense.
Now, I know it happened a few weeks ago, but Robert Saleh was let go since we last spoke. Do you think firing him was the right move in the middle of the season?
Look, I don't think it was Robert Sala's fault, and I think based on the performance of the team since his firing up until this win, it didn't spark them. There was no significant change in how they were playing. I don't think, the reason they were losing games was Robert Saleh. And I understand Woody Johnson probably wanted to create a spark with his team, and he was, it seems like it was kind of an emotional decision or reaction after of a bad loss. I understand that. But I don't think this was Robert Saleh's fault. I think Ulbrich is a fine coach. I think he'll do fine. But I don't think this was a deal where the Jets were underachieving this year because of the job Robert Saleh had done.
I agree. And finally, let's switch sports and talk about the New York Knicks. They're 3-2. They've won their last 2 games. I know it's early, but what's your take on their performance over the first couple of weeks of the season?
Yeah, it's weird times in New York when the Knicks are like the bright spot in the city, right? I think the Knicks and the Rangers are both playing really well. But look, I think the Knicks will take some time to hit peak efficiency with all their new pieces. Karl Anthony Towns, you have to figure out a way to use him. He finally blew up in that game against Miami, scored 42 points. Then the Knicks absolutely annihilated the Pistons last Friday. It was a blowout by midway through the first quarter. Their offense is playing pretty well. Look, they put out 5 guys in their starting lineup that can do things with the ball, share it, and score. I think it makes them a very dangerous offensive team. I think they need to figure out some of the finer points of their defense as these guys learn how to play together. Karl Anthony Towns is not your traditional Tom Thibodeau under the basket, rim protecting center. So I think they have to play a little bit differently with him. But with 3 interchangeable wing defenders with Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges, it's going to make other teams, it's going to give them a lot of trouble to get into the paint and score against the Knicks with those guys being able to switch a lot. So I think they need to figure out how they're going to work that defense of Karl Anthony Towns. And I think they need to figure out a way to consistently get more 3-point shots on offense. That improved a lot in that last game against Detroit and even against Miami. So I think they're getting there. Are they there yet? No. But I think this is going to be a 50-plus win Knicks team. I think they could even get to 55 wins this year. They have the chance to be the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. Philly's really gotten out of the gate slow here with Joel Embiid not playing. So Cleveland's playing well. Indiana's playing well. But I think the Knicks are going to have a pretty darn good year as they move ahead here. And I think they only continue to get better as this group of players learns how to play together.
Long season ahead. John Schmeelk, thanks as always, and we'll check in with you down the road, buddy. Thanks again.
Always fun to talk to you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Head over to ONNJ.com for the latest news and sports anytime.